Hey everyone, this is Jaime Alejandro with the Arts Calling Podcast, the place where I interview hardworking independent creatives in the literary, visual, and performing arts. Just two quick housekeeping things. If you are joining us for the first time, be sure to stop by the shout-out links in the episode description. I try to feature work from friends of the show or cool creative projects that I see on the internet, whether it's on Blue Sky or wherever. Poetry collections, new novels, a cool podcast that is of an arts-related nature. A little bit of everything, I think. And it's kind of nice to support each other right now in this very contentious, difficult time. We need to reach deep for our art, and I'm trying my best to support people as best I can. Item number 2, if you could do me a favor, stop by artscalling.com. It is the new and improved website, and I'm thrilled because we have all things podcast and Coalition under the same roof. If you don't know, the Coalition is the place where I publish a literary magazine. It's pretty cool and absurd and weird, but I also make weird audio projects and write my own things there. So it would be delightful if you could stop by and support the work. You don't have to pay me or anything. Just stop by and subscribe to the newsletter or share something from there with your friends, because again, I think it's time to reach out. Now, with all that fanfare out of the way, let's get our show on the road here. Today, I'm delighted to be Arts Calling Sandra Cruze, writer, producer, and actor. Sandra is acting in films, TV, and stage. Sandra also creates her own content. Her short film, Physics of Killing, won several festival awards and was selected multiple times for others. Her play, Little Sugar, was a quarterfinalist with the Screencraft screenwriting competition, and her YouTube web series, We're Not Dead Yet, received a Festival Grand Prize award in 2021, along with multiple wins and selections for other competitions. Sandra has an amazing mantra here, and she says, I believe in the power of the story because if art can't save us, we're screwed. So to set the tone there, I think Sandra and I had a wonderful time feeling invigorated by the work that we're doing, by the art that needs to happen right now. And it was just a joy to sit down with somebody as passionate about the work as she is. So please enjoy the conversation. Without further delay, let's give Sandra a call. Hey, Sandra, good afternoon or good morning. How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm really glad to be here talking one artist to another.
It's a delightful pleasure. And as you were mentioning just before we started recording here, how were the Oscars for you? It seemed like you had some thoughts.
I do. I live in Los Angeles. We went through the fires literally the day after, January 6th and blah, blah, blah. And I always knew I loved my city. I'll get to the Academy Awards in a minute. But the kind of outreach and community that we all felt made me re-fall in love with it again. And what I love about Los Angeles is our diversity, which has me really upset about what is happening in the world at large, because we are a multinational species. And we have many stories to share with each other. So the Academy Awards, I loved that it spoke to all of that with the fires in Los Angeles, and it's Hollywood. And one of my favorite films was I'm Still Here, which is chilling. And it won Best International Film. Honora won just independent writer, director, editor. He was wonderful. She won the Academy Award. It was just a lot of nice surprises.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seemed like there was a more independent film spirit, a little bit more unrestrained and more honest and, less commercial than what we would normally see in a traditional Oscar race, it seemed.
Yeah, it was really nice. And a lot of surprises. So I was happy again for, there were some disappointments, but, overall, it was pretty great.
Yeah.
My main thing is that Lee didn't get nominated at all. And that was just an extraordinary film.
Yeah.
about, she was the photographer model that took all the pictures that we mainly see in the world today about what happened in Auschwitz and Birkenau and all of that. So anyway, blah, blah, blah.
Well, it sure kept us busy on a Sunday watching the results of that come in. Now, if I may ask you, you have this great quote that I think sort of sets the tone. It's a quote from your website. And I will quote, "If art can't save us, we're screwed." I know we weren't going to talk about, politics. We're more interested in talking about your work. But I think if you could maybe set the tone that way, maybe let us know why that one. Why does that one sit with you so well?
Okay, well, I'm going to just be really honest right now. I'm old. I'm an older woman. And I was a pretty big radical in the 60s and 70s into the 80s. And I really feel out now for me, the pen is mightier than the sword. And I have been utterly moved to my knees with a good story or a good film or a good song. And one of the first things that Hitler did was he came in and he did the degenerate art show and he ridiculed anyone that was different. And we are seeing a lot of that happening now. And I call on all artists to be extraordinarily brave and to not shudder in the face of whatever may come down the road, because we need to tell our stories to each other. I mean, that is how we share our humanity with one another and see the similarities, and rather than focusing on the differences. And so I feel like art is just an extremely, particularly now more than ever, weapon.
Yeah. Do you remember tumultuous times when you were growing up? Like, do you feel like maybe that streak has been in there since you were younger, or when did that develop? Because it seems like you might have had that inclination for a while.
Well, I'm a pretty big feminist. I was a woman in the late 60s, early 70s, where women, they didn't have a right to choose. Hello, we're going through that again. I went to jail a number of times fighting for that right. Women couldn't have a credit card. It just unbelievable things. I was fired because I started showing during my pregnancy, and there was no unemployment. There was nothing. And so we fought for a lot of things, particularly for women's rights. So I'm still, women fight for everybody and everything. And so I'm asking that people please stand up and join in fighting for women's rights, because when you shutter half of humanity and tell them that they have no right to choose over their own body, that's huge. And the ripples of that, I don't think the younger generations have really understood what that is going to entail. And it isn't just a question for women. And so I write, and one of the things I also say is I write about women in danger and dangerous women. So I focus a lot on the injustices of women. And in particular now, I have one thing I'm really dedicated to, and that is the musical I'm writing about my granddaughter who has epilepsy. And it's been quite a journey.
And so I guess now might be a good time to introduce this particular project that you're working on, because it's fascinating and I'm excited to get to it, but maybe we can use it as a backdrop for, the other stuff that we might want to talk about. Can you tell me about Abby Normal, what it entails, what it is that you're, I guess maybe we can start at the very beginning and the germination of that. Like, how did that come to be?
Okay. God, do we have longer than an hour? I'm just joking.
Let's do the elevator pitch and we'll go from there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm in a writing group with some incredible playwrights, and our main teacher, Jamie Brandley, is like Ovation Award, blah, blah, blah. She's incredible. And I started out kind of trying to do a TV pilot for epilepsy. And I'm going to probably return to it because it gives you a chance to do episodes and really develop the characters and see, a lot of things. So, but what happened is my daughter read it and she said, Mom, it's really good, but it has nothing to do with your granddaughter's life, which of course pissed me off. Well, it can't always be, bad. So I went back to the drawing board and I wrote something, and Jamie said, you've written a lot of plays, which I have. Why don't you turn it into a play? So I redid it completely, just threw the other one out, started over, wrote a play, and I read it to my group, and it was like I'd shot their dog. I went, oh, too much, huh? And then I went back and thought, okay, I have to kind of, ease it in a little bit. And I started hearing music. So this is my second musical that I've written. And I reached out to two really incredible composers who worked, I did the lyrics. Mia Campagna she came up with the melodies, and Raul Ferrando, who's an extraordinary composer, composed the music. And that was kind of an accident, and it just evolved. So we met like twice a month for almost a year to do all 18 songs. And it's been quite a journey. We did a staged reading. I have an incredible cast. And now I'm working towards raising a large sum of money to really get it on its feet, because it's a really important piece.
Right. So if we could talk about development for just a minute, because I'm curious the benefits of those kinds of stage readings. Like, how do you feel that you're ready to go, essentially, when you're moving on to the next stage of development, which is to seek an actual production, funding, and the sort of additional things? What kinds of things are you looking for, especially in this particular project, that made you feel like, okay, now we're ready for this next thing? What solidifies the project for you?
I've really, really worked the text of the piece, and getting it on its feet and hearing the music. I mean, it was more than just kind of a staged reading. People were really impressed that came. It got a standing ovation. People cried. I mean, it was like, wow. So I said, okay, she needs some adjustments. I discovered in doing it that I need a song for the dad, and the ending needs to be a little more specific. I needed to turn more of the dialogue into songs, and some of the dialogue more build characters. And that's kind of fun, because you start to learn more about what's happening. And it's just been an amazing experience. One of the things when we put it up, we have to raise $100,000, and that's just, and I've never done anything like this before. And I had this kind of little miracle happen. One of the women, okay, she'll get mad at me for doing this, but I'm going to do it. So I'm in this writing pool called LA Playground. And Jim Kleinman is just one of those patrons of the art you just can't even believe. He's amazing. And he reached out and said, I think you'd be really good to be in our incubator theater umbrella. And I'm like, you want us to start a theater company? And so Sayer, who was the stage man, I did this play with Kevin. We were in this class together, Kevin, Michael Moran, and Elisa Nixon, where they did a play called The Language Archive by, oh my God, hang on, Julie Cho. She also did The Red Panda, and her writing is spectacular. And it's a language archive, and it's about language. And when a language dies, the culture dies with it. And so the person who is preserving the language, his marriage is falling apart because he can't communicate. I mean, it's just a brilliant play. And so Kevin and I were, he was a main lead in it. Kind of everyone in the play is a lead. It's just a great piece. And so we had to learn our lines, rehearse, get the venue. We were producing it, and we went, oh my God, we're pretty good at this. Maybe we should have wouldn't it be great to have a theater company? Boom, that happened. And Sayre, when we first met Sayre, Ann Noble, who directed it, who's an amazing actor and an amazing director and a writer. It's a very small world in Los Angeles, in the theater world. Anyway, she teaches. And so she had Sayre come in to be the stage manager and do all of the lighting and sound and, everything. And she, for the first couple of times, she didn't make a peep. She just didn't talk. And so Kevin and I were thinking, I don't know. And is she going to be able to do this? Maybe Anne made a mistake. So we call her Silent but Deadly. She's on the board of our theater company because she's amazing. And she just got her BA in marketing and production for theater. And one of the things they do in school, if this is going to get to marketing in a minute, is they have 5 to 6 people that work for their final grade to do the marketing, the social media, the fundraising, all of it. And so because she had just finished doing that, she reached out to her teacher, and they are doing that for us now. So we're going to get some help there, which is great because I do a lot of things, but I'm of the older generation, and I'm not all that great with social media.
Yeah, it's the unnecessary burden.
I do. Yeah, I do it, but you really do need, it's a full-time job, and I'd rather write.
Yeah, absolutely. But it seems like you've done a great job at finding your people, which I think is, for one, probably what I think is one of the most important things that one can do as a creative person is like, you need that communal sense of hope and trust that you can't really get on your own, especially if you're a writer. But it seems like you have taken this sort of like long-term look at your creativity, your profession, what you do. How do you establish that? Because I think that a lot of us are just kind of running around, not really knowing if the ground below us is even or even like firm enough to have a long-term perspective. And so like, I guess I'm curious, were you always in the arts? Was the arts always as essential in the way that it is now to you?
Well, I'm going to try to make this quick. Because I was a radical revolutionary for a while, and then I kind of left that and floundered for a little while. I worked as a bartender down in the art district in Los Angeles as it was building up. It was the whole punk movement and the underground art movement. And we did incredible, fun stuff. It was just like, it was a really fun time to be alive in the 80s in the art world in downtown Los Angeles. And, I had almost a 3,000 square foot loft for $400 a month.
Wow.
And
that sounds like fantasy.
Everybody,
it's amazing.
It was insane. and everybody in the building was either a fine artist or a musician or a spoken word poet, or, just extraordinary. And then we would hang out at the Watering Hole Al's Bar. There's a really great documentary about it, the American Hotel in Al's Bar. And so I was in an all-white reggae band because Jesse Easter he used to be in Babylon Warriors, and he started this band with all these people from Cal Arts. He's just brilliant musicians. And then I was in punk bands. And then I realized as a single mother, I needed to have a profession other than just working as a bartender because I had left my political world. I was one of the first women hired at Ford Motor Company under Title VII. I was a full-on radical. That was my life. And so, but I'd always loved acting. It was kind of the first community I'd ever been involved in, but I moved away from it. And then I kind of supported everybody else's. I opened up a hair salon. It became a salon and a gallery, and we showed people's art from downtown. And it took me until I was in my 60s, because I'm 74 now, to admit that I wanted to write and act, and that I didn't want to die without giving it a shot. And starting that late in life is, you have to really go, okay, I don't care if I'm going to be famous or make money. You do it because if I don't do it, I'm going to die now. I mean, really, I have to do it. It was something I ran away from my whole life. And I know, I'm sure with you as well, you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a fascinating way to put it, because I had that same exact thought. Like, why am I running away from it? It's such a specific like way to actually address that. So why were you running away from it? Like, was it just this feeling like you couldn't handle being a mother? And I mean, obviously, like, that seems like it's just that's enough, right? I mean, as a parent myself, I'm like, yeah, I that's a lot going on. But there's always this feeling, at least for me, a good couple of years of my life, I'll say, where I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore, even if it hurts me to not do it, because it's not the right thing to do, quote unquote. But then, like, you come around and you realize, yeah, you can't live without it. So for you, what were those stages of denial and acceptance like? When you had that
Well,
conversation with
when
yourself.
you're young, I don't really think I was that self-aware. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to fix everybody else, and my own world was a mess. I wasn't very good at being a mother, to say the least. And I just didn't understand. I sabotaged so many opportunities I had. I was afraid. I mean, when they talk about being afraid of success, I mean, I look at people who have stood their ground in the arts for decades upon decades upon decades and didn't quit. And I really respect them for that, because um, I don't think I had the self-esteem for it. I had amazing opportunities and I sabotaged many of them. And now it's like, I don't care, you know?
That's the best way to be. You get to the point in your life where you say, I'm not really interested in the things that won't help me, or maybe the things I can't control, but the thing I can control is my art. So maybe we can go from there and try to find a proper
And
direction.
it's like you get better as you continue to do things. You just do. I'm a hairdresser by trade, and I can cut people's hair with my eyes closed practically because I've done hundreds of thousands of heads.
Yeah, yeah.
And the more that you act, I mean, every time you do a role, you are diving into a different experience, and how brave or vulnerable you are capable of being at any given time determines, I think, how good you can be or how honest you can be. And sometimes the muse just doesn't show up, you know?
Oh, that's fascinating. My mom's a hairdresser too, so I lived with that kind of energy in my life, and I always felt, and this is might be a superficial thing, but like, hairdressers get in the zone, unlike most people I know. At least the way that I've seen it, like, is there something like that that you still experience outside of like hairdressing, or am I just sort of like imposing my own, like, everyone's in a flow state, if they're doing something that they like. But it always seemed to be that way to me whenever I go and get a haircut, or my mom was doing it or whatever. It's like she's not even talking. She's just like kind of, in
Oh, I
this
love that you
haircutting
say
zone.
that they're in the zone.
Yeah.
I think it may have even contributed to me not getting involved in the arts sooner, because I mean, one of the things about hair is you make these beautiful masterpieces, really, and then they grow out and they go away. And I never really, and people love their hairdressers, and I love the people that I do their hair. I mean, it's an amazing profession because not only do you get to sit down with strangers and touch them, and it's not, a violation at all, and they begin to trust you, and you fall in love with these people because you share on very intimate levels, and most of the time you make them feel really great, because you're good at what you do. And back in the old days, if I would goof, I would beat myself up with the one mistake I made versus the thousands of haircuts I did where people were happy. And I don't do that anymore. But it took me a while to go, okay, you're not perfect. You made a mistake, or that person wasn't happy, right. Whatever.
Yeah, but that's interesting because it does seem like, why would you need to go into the arts or do anything like that if you were getting that kind of beneficial sort of flow state kind of activity from the work that you were doing? I find that very similar, but it seems like maybe some of that energy could transpose to the work that you're doing now. And you're like, yeah, I guess I can do it over here too, as an artist, as a performer.
And also you feel like for writing, which was a total accident, you just feel like I can't condense or coalesce those ideas and that's just practice and just dumping it out on the page and going, it's horrible. And just having people listen and getting feedback. For instance, because I work in Pasadena, we have JPL, we have Caltech, so I would do these brilliant scientists. And I love science. I've written a number of plays about science and women who've been neglected. Don't even get me started on women scientists, but it's just extraordinary. I do as a science fiction writer. I mean, they're just brilliant, and women genealogists. So in that way, I have this incredible pool of information to, derive a lot of my stories from too. But it's been a really interesting profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It certainly gives you a sort of a bird's eye view of everything that's going on in your community too, because of the different groups of people that you're serving, I imagine. But if for a minute, I may ask you a couple of things about house theater, because Abby Normal is sort of like its leading project, right? Like its debut project. So, can you tell me about just a little bit more about this team energy dynamic that you guys are working with over there at House Theater? Obviously, you're friends, you're acquaintances, and collaborators. You've known each other for a little while. How do you set the tone of this kind of production company or theater that sort of maintains its own integrity? Like, what are you guys looking to do with it? Is it going to be more stories like Abby Normal, or is this just sort of like a trial period of like, we're figuring ourselves out artistically?
Well, we're doing a little bit of both, and I feel like I didn't answer your question too about how do you build a community of artists.
Sure.
I think, speaking for myself and people I know, even in the Academy Award, you watch actors, they love other we love each other. I love to watch film. I love to go to the theater. I'm going tonight. I'm going tomorrow night. I support my friends, that are in it. And you begin to build this community and this family, and you support each other in it because it's hard. Nobody makes any money mainly. And you work, you memorize, and you do all these things, and you want people to show up. You want to share it with each other. And so when we decided that we would in fact go ahead and do this theater company, and we called it House Theater because we really wanted it to feel like a safe place to come. And I wish Kevin was here. I had asked him, but he's really busy, and he does he's very supportive with me on this team. And Sarah did the clips because we're going to do a newsletter, and I'll send it to you because we'll have clips of the staged reading. But when we did our submission to see if we would even be picked as a theater company, we talked about, well, what is our mission? What is our vision statement? And we are and then there was something that just came out recently that I was reading. It's called Open Fist Theater, and they redid their mission statement to really emphasize and even more affirm DEI. And so we are very much a group of people who want to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves or haven't had a voice enough, or who are under attack. One of the next play we have on the docket is called Sick, and it was done in the Hollywood why can't I think of it? Fringe Festival, Hollywood Fringe. And it's he's an Israeli playwright, and it is about the situation where if you were a homosexual, you were considered mentally ill and could be put. And so it's a whole play about how things evolved within the therapy and psychology movement when they finally overturned that horrible law. And so given what is happening right now in the world around, I mean, they've stopped women's right to choose. I really feel like the next thing that's going to be on the chopping block will probably be gay marriage. I mean, the first thing Trump said out of his mouth was there's only two genders. And you're just like, really? So this is why I believe that art is so important.
Yeah, and I struggle with this a lot, and I'm glad that I'm having this conversation with you. And a lot of the guests that I've spoken with this year it's been very fortuitous for me because I I was completely deflated in terms of what the context of art is when we're looking at the overall political landscape and cultural, stance on where things are right now. And this idea of doubling down is essential. And the way that you're doing it with Abby Normal, the discussion about disability, the type of isolation and loneliness where people just get completely ostracized for being even just a little bit slightly different
Yeah.
is so necessary, even if we feel like we're repeating the same message. I just think it's such a basic but honest reminder of what we need to do. So I'm very grateful
You're
to you
so
for that.
lovely.
But well,
Thank you.
no, thank you, because I mean that's exactly what it's all about. But for Abby Normal, though, you have a couple of theatrical techniques that you kind of use, direct address, right? To sort of make it
Yes.
a more immersive experience. Can you tell me how you arrive at that kind of form? Like, what kind of choices early on made you decide that this would be the best way to share the story?
Well, as I said earlier, this particular play has been through so many iterations. At first, we had a teacher and Abby, and they would talk to each other, and one of them did direct address. And then I thought, you know what? I think we need to have Seizure as a character. So Seizure is a character, and he is a motherfucker. And he has his own song. He dances around, and because I wanted it, rather than it just being her having seizures, I wanted people to see what it means, what it does in her life, this brain abnormality. And so that was an evolutionary thing over the course of writing this. I'm like, oh, he's a character. And so a dear friend of mine, Raynard Deegan, played Seizure in the staged reading. And he was great. He had a top hat on and tails with ruffles. And he's obnoxious. And then we have a carnival so that it shows all the different kinds of seizures she has. And she's like, and when she says, I'm not a freak, this music explodes into this really weird carny music. And so visually, I have been able to see it as I've been writing it. And it's one of those things that when it's really done, it's going to be something even more spectacular. And I've done a lot of research. My granddaughter, I could go on and on about how tough she is and how wonderful she is, and how she deals with this situation. And then there's another woman. It's called Hidden Truths. She's a doctor. She's a neurologist, and her son has epilepsy. And they've started this incredible art community, Hidden Truths. And she and I talk a lot. She's in the Bay Area, and we kind of shore each other up because she's writing a book about epilepsy and about art. So going back to that, I'm sorry to talk about this again, and you can edit it out if you want.
Please go ahead.
But when the helicopter crashed into the plane and Trump got up and blamed DEI for that accident, when he had just completely canned half of the FAA, in the control room, he also targeted people with epilepsy. And it was so hardcore that the Epilepsy Foundation, the Nationwide Epilepsy Foundation, who I work with, had to come out with a statement. And so another play I've written, and I have a short movie called The Physics of Killing. It is about the Oversteegen sisters. They were two sisters in the Netherlands during the occupation who lured Nazis there in the resistance. They lured Nazis into the forest and killed them. And I thought, well, that's something we should popularize for women. But one of the things in researching for that play was called the T4. And it was a program that euthanized anyone with a mental or physical disability. And that was a German population, their children, their people. And there was a huge outcry against it, but I'm sure they did it, hidden.
Right.
But it was a precursor to the camps. And so when Trump says something about epilepsy in public and ridicules it, and he's ridiculed people with disabilities, it's chilling. And so I'm going to quadruple down. He doesn't scare me. I think he's a maniac. I don't know how he's come into office. I really feel like whatever is underlying all of it is greed and racism that supports him. I'm sorry.
Sure. And I think you're spot on. The playbook is one we've seen before, and the type of fear mongering, all it does is divide the people who should be uniting against corporate, greed and,
oh my God.
Political leaders who are not loyal to their constituents. At the very core, it's the easiest playbook for them to implement because I guess maybe it's almost a default setting for us to be afraid of each other, but it doesn't have to be that way. But that's why, I do agree that it's important to double down, especially to provide examples of what DEI actually means to people who either refuse to acknowledge what it is, and they know what it is, or those who are not in the know just yet. But something like this, you are talking about epilepsy and humanizing these really like hard to understand concepts of, how epilepsy actually works and that sort of thing. And I'm glad you brought it up because normally I would imagine that the issue would be to humanize and to make these kinds of topics approachable. But it seemed like you being sort of immediately affected through your family by this condition, it seems like you kind of had to go the other way around, is to find the factual, the research, and sort of bring that into the emotional experience that was your life and how you felt about it, right? So can you tell me a little bit more about it? Because I liked what you were telling me about the type of research that you did. And how did you do that without getting buried in just like research, right? And keeping it an emotional, approachable story?
Well, one of the things when I work with Jamie, the other Jamie, she said, because what happened after my daughter said it's not really what's going on with Lucia. And then I started sticking so close to our story, and Jamie said, you can veer away. That's art. And so that's what I've been doing. But initially, so that it doesn't become like an educational or a documentary, that it's really a story that people go along and see what it is like for a family and particularly the child. Now, what's really interesting is another play about epilepsy. There's been nothing on it. There's been things on autism and depression and bipolar and suicide and all of that, but there's really been nothing on epilepsy. And literally the same day we did our staged reading, this other play came out about epilepsy, and I went to see it, and I was kind of crestfallen when I thought, oh my God, and he's a Tony Award winning writer and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh God, we're screwed. They'll never do two plays on Broadway because I'm taking this to Broadway, right? Anyway, I went and saw it, and it's wonderful. And it is completely different than ours because theirs is from the point of view of how it impacts the son of the child with epilepsy and the family. And this is truly from the person's point of view who has epilepsy. And they both need to be told.
Sure. Yeah.
So this one starts out with her being really young. Abby's young, and she's, a normal kid, right? And then she starts to have seizures. And as she starts to have seizures, it impacts her mental faculties. It starts to impact what she can and can't do physically, which now is just almost everything. And she loses friends, and she has to change schools. The worst part of it was she fell and broke her arm the first seizure she had, and my family had just been diagnosed, and they were considering, we're going to give this 9-year-old these hardcore drugs, and they were considering it, and they hadn't given her drugs. So while she was in the hospital, the neurologist called, or somebody called the CPS on my daughter and son-in-law, and it was hideous. It's like you're going through this, and now you've got CPS on you, Child Protective Services. It was horrible. So that's in the play. And it's also like, well, what do seizures look like? What is her life like? And how do you, it's almost like, how do we live our beautiful lives, even though we've got a government that is out of control?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where they're rounding up people and putting them in concentration camps, basically. They're taking away. How do we continue to find joy in our life? And so that is kind of the situation in the play as well. How do we, with whatever is handed to us, deal with reality, never give up, and find the beauty in your one little life? And that's kind of the story.
A necessary one, definitely. But I'm curious how writing this project, working on this project has it helped you, not to say that you didn't before, but has it helped you clarify things about your family or your relationship with your family that perhaps you didn't have the tools to deal with before, like doing this kind of work, research and writing it out and processing all this stuff? Like, were there any sort of unintended benefits that maybe came along that made you feel like you understood the relationships a little bit better?
You ask really good questions.
Oh, well, that's great. I try.
I guess the main thing I will say about it is, well, a couple of things. And I say it in my kind of pitch when I'm trying to get grants or funding or whatever, is, there's 50 million or more, 65 million people worldwide with epilepsy. It is the least researched and the least understood brain disorder on the planet. Even in my small writing group, people went, I had no idea that you went through this, that your family went through this, that I had no idea about, and people just don't know. And there's so much shame around it and so much misunderstanding and superstition. So for me, my feeling powerless over being able to help my granddaughter, because, as a grandmother and a mother, we want to fix things. And my way of trying to do something was to share her story, that it might help others. And in the course of that, it has made her feel very cared for and seen, if that makes sense. And it's a lot. It's a lot. It's been a lot. It's expensive. It's been my focus. And as my husband said to me, well, what else are you going to spend your money on? I'm like, okay.
Right. I mean, if there's no better investment than the next generation, no matter what conditions or things they're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have children?
Yeah, I have the one. And he's the greatest ever. So as a parent, it's striking because like you're saying, you get a different perspective when you become a parent. And of course, I imagine that as a grandparent, I mean, that's sort of like double the type of exhilarating feeling that that you need that kind of love and support in your life. It's pretty awesome.
Also, I think as a grandmother, I'm in a position to take more risks.
Mm, okay.
I've
Yeah.
lived a really amazing life, a long, rich, amazing life. And I don't want to get arrested. You know what I mean? Whatever. But I will do what is necessary. Let's just put it that way. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I, um, I don't have that much to lose anymore on a
Yeah.
certain level.
Yeah.
If that makes sense,
No, that makes perfect sense. I think it's an attitude that maybe a lot of us could afford to kind of take in, but we don't think that we can. I think that there's a lot of like self sort of censoring and hesitation about doing the right thing. But
Mhm.
yeah, maybe it kind of ties into what I wanted to ask you, which right around this time I tend to look at things that sort of keep you going through the day. I feel like a lot of a lot of conversations about creativity are focused about the hustle and the types of things that you need to do to make it in the business. But I personally am more interested in the sustainability of somebody's creative pursuits and sort of like fostering a long-term kind of lifestyle that makes you a better artist. So what kinds of things do you do on a regular basis that nourish you, that make you feel like you have even footing and you're able to proceed with life and craft together? Like what keeps you going on a daily basis?
Well, I have animals,
Oh
and I
man,
love
that's
my animals.
yeah.
They're the best. They're just the best.
Yeah.
I could talk about that for a long, long time. And I used to volunteer at the Los Angeles Zoo. I did food prep for the great apes. Animals, so I also do some things around the environment and all living things that makes I need to feel like my life has meaning and purpose. And so I try to be disciplined. I have to say I do work, but I don't work like I used to when I owned a business and had to be responsible for a huge overhead. So I have a lot more freedom and free time. And my husband makes that possible now, which is great. Um, so I try to write a couple of hours every day, and I network a lot. I think it's important to support other artists, um, you know, and I go to plays a lot, and I submit, and I'm in plays a lot, or I'm in these crazy films. I'm always kind of the mean grandmother or whatever in verticals. Um, but it's good to keep your chops up. And I take classes, and I feel like I'm kind of in this really nice pocket of humanity who have the same kind of goal that I have. But I've been at it now for a good solid decade, I would say. And that it takes that. And I'm starting to see, like, I'll go do, like, I was in this play not too long ago, and one of the people who came, we were doing our first in-person rehearsal, and one of the people was sick, so he was on Zoom, and I heard him go, "Sandy, is that you?" Like, what are the odds? I mean, every time I do something, I've worked with somebody in some capacity. So you just keep at it. You just don't quit. Do not give up. Do not get disheartened. It's okay to, you know, um, what we do is hard. Auditioning is hard. It's like, I always say, it's like you're on the seller's block. It's like, you want to check my teeth, you know, am I good enough? You
Yeah.
just go in
Yeah.
and you practice, and you love what you do, and you just keep doing it.
I love that very, very much. And I think it's a phenomenal note to end on, even though I could talk to you for hours and days because we just scratched the surface. There's many facets to Sandra, but hopefully we'll get to chat a little bit more down the road, once you get some other things happening. But I'm very, very excited for you and the work that you're doing over at House Theater. Of course, I'm going to put the link in the episode description so folks can sign up to the newsletter. Maybe they can keep posted that way. But this has been awesome, Sandra, and I can't thank you enough because I am inspired. I'm ready to go. And I'm slowly but surely fighting this sort of like, I'm regaining my faith in the arts the longer I talk to people like you. So thank you so much for inspiring me.
You can call me anytime. I'll give you a pep talk.
Yeah, thank you again, Sandra. This was awesome, and I wish you the best on this. It's going to be.
Thank you so much. You're lovely. You're in the family now, Jamie.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your kindness. That's very awesome and kind of you. But I'll be around.
Okay. All righty. Thank
Take
you
care.
so much.